From the introductory paragraphs of Dr. Alice Forstall's seminar, Material and Monoliths Towards a Materialist Theory of Networked Fundamental Space, delivered at the Perihelion Institute for Advanced Sciences at the Tricentennial Congress, Second Era.
Despite their critical importance to interstellar civilization, precious little is known of the beacon array that forms the foundation of our galactic network, and lesser still is known of the beacons themselves. What is known of the beacons, however incomplete, provides the theoretical framework to transit the vast distances between stars, by way of threadspace, the folding of space and time between the beacons. Now, you might think the beacons as entry and exit points between the layers of fundamental physical reality, like the entrance and exit way of a subway station. But it may be more accurate to think of the beacons like a needle and thread, passing its cordage in and out of the very fabric of reality, weaving together a complex tapestry of the interstellar dialectic, in the melding cultures, philosophies, influences, and ultimately, the games of empire still played among the greater powers today. This framework provides the keys to unlock an age of expansion, a second era of stellar civilization, proliferating ever outwards among the stars. Now, more akin to a refinery slug crawling across an orichalcum reactor than a technological breakthrough, the age that followed the discovery of the beacon array led to a century of resource consolidation in the core worlds, the fuel needed to fan the flames of a monumental reverse engineering effort, and the christening of the first Hierophant of the Concordat. These polarizing conditions resulted in an era of unprecedented raw capital extraction and industrial advancement in the frontier colonies of the local cluster, and the proliferation of exotic technologies among the privileged zealotry of the Concordat hegemony and the elite of the core world's corporatocracy. Breakthroughs in fundamental physics and exotic material science that could have paved the way to abundance was poisoned and contorted to prioritize new weapons of war and record profits. A profane pursuit to expand the means of production to a cosmic scale, calcifying the caste system of haves and have-nots that made such advancement possible. Countless lives were lost in the pioneering days of fundamental astronavigation. Intrepid starfarers plotting wayward courses to destinations made only just escapable by the fundamental analytic engines powered by a stolen claim to the technologies of our interstellar forebears, now long gone. Leaving little more than fingerprints in the silent constellation of reliquary monoliths that dot the cosmos like ancient and unknowable fence posts, upon which portents we can only speculate. Perhaps whoever built the beacons did so to suggest a certain inevitability, perhaps even laying an intentional path forward. An invisible hand, guiding the long arc of progress towards a unifying cosmology, a deeper truth, if you'll allow me the indulgence. One in which the star-faring civilizations find their true calling among the heavens, hand in loving hand. But then again, perhaps the boundless possibilities of expansion and the beacon array mask a more maligned potentiality. The total number of known beacons is an infinitesimal figure compared to the vast expanse of the wider and unexplored galaxy. Perhaps our cosmic ancestors laid the path of the beacons, not to usher in an age of expansionary abundance, but to lay the bait for an irresistible snare, daring to draw us outward from the comfortable misery of limited resources into a gilded cage of sorts, where we are seduced by greater potential and rewarded with greater conflict. While unseen forces of a dark constellation coalesce and gather just outside of view, it is up to us, and us alone, to claim our inheritance and chart our path forward.
Howdy, and welcome to Risky Standard, an actual play podcast featuring a rowdy group of best friends telling stories and playing tabletop role-playing games together. You can find the show over on Blue Sky at riskystandard.bsky.social. You can also find us on the show's Discord, which is probably the best way to keep up with what's coming down the pipe, where I reign supreme as webmaster. Now's actually a great time to join the Discord. We'll be posting some maps, some character arts, and talking about our upcoming season of The Wild Seed by Felix Isaacs, dropping very soon. And as you may have noticed by now, I am not your usual host and GM, Mitchell Brewster. I am instead Pete Loftus. And thanks to all my hard work in season 1, I was able to net a big promotion. And so I'm very pleased to announce I will be the host from now on and forever. And it's funny, I'm looking at you guys and I'm just thinking, I remember what it was like. I remember what it was like to be coming up, and I'm excited for you guys. Just kidding. So I am hosting today because we are going to be doing something a little different in between seasons. And today we're going to build off the universe and setting we established in our first season, playing Beam Saber. But we're going to play a different Forged in the Dark game today called Scum and Villainy, which is more of a science fiction flavored setting for the Forged in the Dark system, by John LaBeouf Little and Straz Asimovic from Off Guard Games. One of the things that I like about Scum and Villainy is that it is legally distinct from many other science fiction properties with little or no relation to mythopoetic franchises beholden to a giant corporate rat. I've got a really nice hardcover here from Evil Hat Productions. And if you'd like a copy of Scum and Villainy for yourself, you can head on over to evilhat.com to get the book, or pick up the digital edition on itch.io. We'll drop a link to that in the show notes as well. And so with me today, I've got Mitch Brewster.
Howdy, risk takers. A real treat today to be sitting in the player's seat, watching somebody else working their way through the intro. A little surreal, but I am very excited to see what our resident chip expert has cooked up for us today.
And Malcolm Hall.
What's up, gamers, players of all sorts? I have not brushed my teeth or showered today, so yeah, I'm ready to game.
And Tim Mans.
What's up? You know what? I'll just say this. Let's go. I thought I said something more. I was going to try to make a joke about call me Marge Simpson because I love you, homies, but didn't really work in the context. And she doesn't really call them homies. It's mostly homie. So I didn't want any boy to feel left out by just saying homie singular.
And speaking of not left out, last but not least, we have producer extraordinaire Liam Doherty on the line. He is producing, I think, for us in season 2. We're very stoked to have Liam. So
hell yeah,
would be remiss not to mention. If you haven't had a chance yet, it's not required, but it might be a good idea to pick up on season 1 on the desert planet of Imber. And like I said, today we'll be picking up a risky standard side story set within our patron faction, the Boundless Ring, the hardscrabble federation of anarcho-syndicalists fighting to build a perpetual revolution in an interstellar union, uniting the disparate and the downtrodden across the stars. But we're putting the frontier world of Imber and the Black Star constellation behind us for now and turning our camera's gaze elsewhere in the local cluster to the Ring's covert operation agency, the enigmatic Division of Silent Accords, a clandestine operation within the Ring's intelligence branch shrouded in myth, called on to preempt and resolve matters of interstellar diplomacy, espionage, and subterfuge, protecting the fragile peace within the Ring without public acknowledgement. Each of you in the last few days were dispatched by your appropriate handlers, bringing you here. Elsewhere in darkened rooms, by the dim glow of green and black letters collecting line by line, a CRT screen terminal displays an urgent message. Beacon trace, priority transmission. Subject, threadspace anomaly detected. Alert code, sagacious. Exotic fundamental signature confirmed. Interval report, stellar object of unknown origin, designate redacted. ThreadNav telemetry archive notes initial observation over 300 years ago. Object making intermittent incursions into real space. Frequency and duration increasing. Previous intercept attempts unsuccessful. And after a few moments, intervention assessment complete. Accession risk probability high. Diplomacy coefficient risky. Fundamental containment procedures standard. Combat effectiveness differential within acceptable parameters. Recommendation, establish silent accord. Camera opens. We see afterburners flare as your shuttlecraft comes tearing through the frame, careening through space and towards a small station in the orbit of a massive, deep red star. Its surface churns and boils, and in the distance you can see the silhouette of the system's beacon, one of the many towering monoliths that compose the network of folded space-time highways connecting the cosmos. As our ship gets closer here, we can see the station itself is kind of a cluster of spires kind of built out of a rock, something kind of like an asteroid, but it's been pretty developed. There's an artificial ring, I think, surrounding it. You can probably see a few ships docked here. although it is fairly sparsely populated. I think that's when the title card hits, right? Tenemer 3, Provenance Station, 27 hours to contact. I think we get a snap cut, right? You're in the docking bay now. I think the camera sees the landing ramp of the shuttlecraft drop in front of us as steam kind of hisses, the pylons arrive, and you get a look at the interior of the station. You're in a docking bay. Behind you, or I guess probably in front of you, would be a blast door here, I think sealed. As you descend from this ramp and off board, a tall, slender woman standing in front of these blast doors, the sharp features, kind of a deep sort of chestnut skin tone, very meticulously maintained angular haircut, and a long black, sharp trimmed kind of coat, stands waiting. I think is kind of like looking at her watch. And as the steam clears and you step out onto the ramp, I think she kind of clicks her heels, straightens up a bit, and says, right on time. I'm Bereska Perneb, Procurator, Ring Intelligence. Walk with me. The doors open, right, to a central corridor leading deeper into the station. I think as you pass here, you can see that this was, it's not massive, but I think that there are kind of side rooms. It looks like there is some research kind of going on. I think you probably see a Gratch, one of the lanky, kind of orange-skinned, many-armed aliens we've seen before, struggling to keep a number of like silver metallic balls or something in hand with his like 6 arms juggling, which kind of seem to be moving at their own accord. I think elsewhere you see, kind of like an orderly pushing a cart full of, like boxes of files and paperwork back and forth. I think maybe one of those balls even like trips up the cart or something. One of these boxes spills out and you see it's full of the kind of clunky data disks that we've seen kind of inserted like a cassette into big computers elsewhere in the setting. Miss Perneb continues, welcome to Provenance Station. Officially, this installation was commissioned as a stellar observation platform. Its mission, to record the heat death of the supermassive red giant expanding at the heart of the Tannhauser system. Sadly, following an unforeseen coronal mass ejection event, the observation platform's orbit decayed, and the installation was decommissioned, falling into the stellar envelope of the red giant, where it was destroyed, instantly. There were no casualties, and not much fanfare for solar observatories either. This is a cover, naturally. The installation was relocated. Today, Provenance Station is one of several blacklisted repositories that make up the Ring's archival failsafe system, the Index. Within these durasteel walls resides the collected knowledge of the known universe of the Second Era, most of which would be known to you, some of which is, shall we say, reserved for more deliberate purposes. Were the distributed command network of the Boundless Ring to ever fail, this installation would endure, to rebuild if necessary, a sort of plan B. Here we are now. And I think you have arrived at an elevator kind of in the central column. Doors split open. I think the interior of this elevator is kind of like white, classic, science fiction, light up from ahead. Pulls here in my head are like Star Wars or Star Trek, and I think this lift starts to take you upwards towards some of these spires that we've seen, and the doors seal shut. You can kind of hear the hum of this elevator lift, and I think Perneb kind of catches herself for a minute, realizes she sort of talked a lot, straightens up and, murmurs, I'm sure you have questions. There'll be time for that.
Are we all in the elevator?
Yeah. Are you all in the elevator?
I'm in the elevator.
I'm in the elevator, and there's not a lot of room in there for me, I'll tell you that much.
I am not in the elevator.
Okay.
Now that we figured out which boys are in the elevator or not, continue, please.
It's shuffling. It's a little quiet. You've kind of just arrived here on unlimited context, following kind of a priority dispatch, an urgent transmission to arrive at Provenance Station as quickly as you can, where a ship has been readied. I think maybe shuffling a little here, and maybe Malcolm, maybe kind of sizing up Tim, right? Like in hearing you don't know each other necessarily. When I think a chime rings and the doors open. And in front of you, I think, is sort of a different scene from what the rest of the station looked like. It is I think, sort of semicircular observation deck here. Big bay windows, kind of transparent steel glass looking out towards this red giant. And I would say, when you walk in, it's kind of like in very deep, rich red light. And I think even as you kind of like walk onto the platform flooring, you can kind of see a shade drop, right? Like, and it's not like a blinds, it's just like a tinted screen kind of starts to descend. And here you can see, I think, the patterns of the kind of like solar discharges here kind of erupting and boiling over, flanking this bank of consoles, right? And so walking into this room, you'd see a large table with a gadgety looking emitter at its center pointing upwards. You'd recognize this as a stage, the holographic interface used across the ring that we've seen elsewhere in the setting. And currently it's displaying a 3D map of the solar system with this giant star at its center, sort of looming large above the table before you. Surrounding you, all around as you walk into this room, are the whirs, clicks, and hums of the various calculating engines and analytic drives, flanked by banks of these dimly glowing CRT monitors. And I think Praneb, walking just a few steps ahead of you, would turn towards you, gesturing over the table, and say, "Right, well, I believe some congratulations are in order. You've been selected by the calculating wisdom of the apparatus for an opportunity the likes of which your fellow citizens of the Ring may never even hear exists. Your candidacy has been determined for recruitment into the Division of Silent Accords. Perhaps you've heard of our division, perhaps not.
I've heard rumors. I didn't know it was actually real.
That would be the intent. Secrecy is the backbone of diplomacy, comrade. To protect the enduring peace and promise of the Ring, certain preventative measures must be taken, which may cause a certain, shall we say, preventable discomfort for the general population. It's said history is written by the victors. In truth, it is almost always some degree of fabrication." And I think Praneb continues here. "Should you choose to accept this assignment, you should understand. There are no riches awaiting your return. Your names will not appear in any headlines, nor will your accolades become fodder for some bellwether pulp novella. In fact, if you are indeed successful, no one will need know of your efforts at all. But the Ring is generous and will see that your labor bears fruit." And I think kind of sizing the three of you up, right? Well, I guess I don't know where Mitch is, but why don't we start with some character intros right there?
I'll go first. For this little adventure, I will be playing Dr. Alice Forstall and using the Stitch playbook, which is, I guess a doctor is kind of the, first kind of take. I'm playing more of like an academic doctor. She is a human, average height, I'd say, late 40s, like mostly gray hair. There's probably like a gray with some streaks of. Her position is archaeologist for the Perihelion Institute for Advanced Sciences. She is from the Ring, grew up in the Ring, a devout follower, I'd say. She has, a doctorate in First Era Tech and also a doctorate in xenobiology.
Uniquely suited for this kind of work.
Exactly.
Who else have we got here? Tim, you want to go next?
As we were welcomed to this table, offered seats, my character Bracco, at 7'7", looks at that chair and knows that that's not going to work.
He grabs two chairs.
He politely pushes it in and remains standing, towering over everyone. You can tell by the looks of him that if he was to be played in a game setting, he might be the muscle because of all of his. He is average height for an Aurelian, which is in this world where they are, very, very large, muscle-bound, gray, rough-skinned humanoid aliens.
And for the listening audience at home, Aurelians were something we played with in the first season, basically to create a race of space wrestlers who kind of serve as pirates. So you can kind of think like Big Show here or any of these like big man wrestlers in WWE. As I recall, kind of the Aurelians are sort of like space refugees in a sense. They kind of like live in a nomadic space piracy culture. Is that right?
Many years ago, they themselves had kind of commandeered various smaller planets, but also, like so many other things, got swept up in the Commonwealth's acquisition of various different systems. So with that, they also were taken over and became somewhat subject to the Commonwealth and their more financial control. But yeah, he's casting a shadow over this table with his size.
And I think there's a third character in this squad. I can't tell if they're in an elevator.
I think that the camera, right, the way this was framed, right, I think there's a kind of darkness at the other end of the stage, at the end of this table, that is illuminated as a hand-rolled cigarette is lit. And this smoldering cherry kind of gives us the light of an older, probably like mid-50s human man, kind of a weathered, lined face who is sitting back in a chair with his feet up on the stage in a kind of posture of extreme relaxation, already having been waiting in this briefing room. He probably introduces himself in this moment, Argo Cartel, external operator for Aphelion. Which is Aphelion here, the kind of broader name for the Ring's intelligence networks. And he is wearing like a tightly rolled black watch cap, black turtleneck. Like I said, an older man, very lined. My like face cast here is Jacques Cousteau, the oceanographer. And I think, holding this cigarette with like kind of one hand that is a prosthetic hand. I think it's like I'm thinking of like Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars films. This kind of like almost like mechanical sculpture, not quite fully covered. And I am playing the Scoundrel today, which in Scum and Villainy is how do they say it? A scrappy survivor with more luck than brains. The Scoundrel here has a little bit more of almost a kind of spy. Argo is an external operator. He does things to advance the causes of the Ring across the galaxy outside of the places that it controls. So he spends most of his life actually outside the Ring, kind of conducting operations, often undercover, to advance its goals. And, I think heavy drag on that cigarette, exhale, and then looking to Dr. Forstall and Braco with a slight nod of greeting. Welcome.
That's correct. Dr. Forstall, Braco, Argo Cartel is a returning favorite of the Ring.
A chuckle at that choice of terminology.
Yeah, so I think, as you're seated, I think in these high-backed chairs around the stage, on the, right side, you have this kind of Durasteel transparent window looking out towards this boiling red giant of the Tenemer star. You can see the kind of solar ejections kind of roiling and erupting here. I think it also it looks cool. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think it's like a deep kind of burning red. Like you would even probably see as you look across the others of the table, there's kind of like a moody dark red lighting. On the opposite side, behind the stage, you would see another window, kind of like an accompaniment to the other. And behind this, it would be like a large chamber, right? Like tall, vast. And I think the walls are just kind of lined with the handles of these chunky, kind of data cassettes, right? All slotted into the wall here. This would be like a data vault. And I think for listeners of season 1, would pretty readily recognize kind of a central column in this data vault, threaded and rippling with these thick, black cables, I think almost tensing and pulsing, almost like sinewy muscle, as, a long arm, extends like a crane. And I think going up and down, kind of moving these data cassettes kind of back and forth. This would be, a manifestation of the apparatus. The apparatus being the vast logistical distributed engine that kind of performs the analysis and strategic decision making that kind of governs the Ring, the interstellar union of anarcho-syndicalists here. The apparatus itself is not a religion, it's not a god, it's not a director, but it is the kind of lifeblood that allows the Ring to organize collectively across many different solar systems. And I think Perneb, walking here again, we're, kind of, the pole in my head is sort of like a darker skinned, Tilda Swinton, right? Like long, angular, almost bird-like. Is human, though, and I think kind of like walking the perimeter here would be back on that wrist device. I think, and as you can probably see it here, it's a black kind of reflective surface, and it is like mottled and dappled with little raised, almost like buttons. The pull in my mind here is like the Kurzweil reader. It's a piece of technology that was like a very early assistive technology that allowed like blind people to put a piece of paper into a scanner that would like spit it out as braille. So this controller, I think, is kind of like, almost like rippling, almost like alive here. And you can see that she's kind of clicking and adjusting something on the wrist device. That arm of the apparatus, I think, is kind of reshuffling and retrieving something from the data vault. And as this clicks into place, I think the stage updates here with kind of a grainy image that would come up on the holo display. And this image, I think, is, what you can probably make out. It's pretty pixelated, but is sort of like a column of what looks maybe like stone, in an asteroid belt here. And this thing is kind of tilted, ajar. The pull in my head is like columnar basalt, is a kind of rock formation that is natural, but it looks very unnatural. It's almost like a perfectly hexagonal column of stone here, and you would see this kind of on your side. And Pradem would continue, right? Like, I'll cut to the chase. Time is of the essence. Ring Intelligence has been tracking an interstellar object for centuries, seemingly unstuck in threadspace. This object would appear to be in a kind of perpetual transit across the folded space-time between the beacons. Designated the Aeonian, this object is of unknown origin. There's some reason to believe the object may be far older than our recorded instances. On the stage now is one of the few holos in the archive, clicking forward nearly 350 years ago. And we see this thing, a derelict hunk, kind of adrift in space in this grainy holographic image, and Praneb continues. This Aeonian has been known to make incursions at the site of beacons and well beyond, including many thought to be dormant or non-functional altogether. This object seems to be slipping in and out of threadspace intermittently, phasing in and out of material reality, perhaps at will. I think advancing a slide. Over the centuries, this object has taken on something of a mythic status among early starfarers and pioneers of the beacon array, something of a ghost ship, an ominous reminder of the hazards of threaded space, and how little we truly understand of the fundament beyond. And I think advancing, you would hear the crane arm of the data vault behind you whir and reset, inserting another data cassette as the holographic stage reorders, this time showing a slightly more modern image, sort of like a shitty security camera feed, advancing a few frames at a time, and this Aeonian appearing over the course of 5 or 6 frames, like click, 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 click. We're seeing an open expanse of space, and then a sudden distortion, kind of ripple in space-time, and suddenly this hulking silhouette emerging and appearing suddenly into material reality out of nowhere. Praneb continues. Like a comet, the Aeonian appears to transit the beacon array in something of a linear trajectory, something of a predictable cycle, but one we've yet to observe the beginning or end of, we think. The object may disappear for decades before manifesting elsewhere in another corner of space. And I think advancing again. Most recently, within the last 2 standard years, stellar reconnaissance has confirmed the Aeonian's incursions are increasing, both in frequency and duration. Intervals have crept from a few minutes to a few hours, now to days, before slipping away back into the thread space. These incursions are unpredictable and, as a rule, dangerous. Clicking forward again, I think this time in higher fidelity, you'd probably recognize this as a more modern holographic image. This increase has led the apparatus to conclude that the object's fuel source may be decaying, or worse, becoming unstable. But unfortunately, we're not the only interested party. And I think zooming into what's currently on the stage here, the image is of what we've seen before, of this kind of column of stone. But this most recent image, I think, has like a, when like a tree has a fungus and it grows like a knot, like one of those bulbous kind of knots around a branch. And I think that column here has one of these kind of bulbous growths sort of towards the back of it. From the images you can see, this is like the same material, but I think it's like pockmarked. and has, probably like a patina of collision strikes and other things. And I think zooming in here, manipulating the control at her wrist, Perneb calls your attention to a detail in the holographic image, zooming in and refining the projection. This recording was taken near the old Orcus 5 beacon approximately 6 months ago. The Aeonian appears to have developed an abrasion on its starboard side, and you can see a rough gash torn into the surface, near the gnarled burl, towards the rear of the column of stone, and from this gash is drifting a sort of cloud of vapor, presumably atmosphere from its interior. Zooming in again, in sort of a classic procedural TV show, computer, enhance. It's grainy, but you can make out the silhouette of a Concordat expeditionary scout ship near the object's exterior. The Concordat, of course, being the sort of zealous imperial space hegemony of this setting, which we explored a bit further in Season 1. The Concordat are an expansionary power, compelled ever outward from the Imperial core in an endless crusade across the stars at the command of their living godhead, the Hierophant, to find the spigot by which their demiurge and creator, the Builder, meters out his grace, and to smash it permanently open. Whether or not the Builder actually exists, your guess is as good as mine. Probably doesn't really matter. The end goal, of course, is expansion and domination. Our patron faction, the Ring, is sort of the primary antagonist to those ends. And Perneb continues. Our analysts believe this wound in the Aeonian may be an artifact of a breaching attempt. At present, it's unknown if the Concordat scouts were successful in their attempt to board. Our interception attempts have been unsuccessful. The object emanates a potent mix of exotic radiation and doesn't seem to match any known fundamental signatures. The sensitivity and urgency of the task at hand cannot be overstated. A fundamental reactor capable of perpetual transit within the beacon array for several hundred years without refueling would be categorically well beyond even the most cutting-edge ships of the line. Needless to say, were this technology to fall into the hands of the Concordat, it would be a death knell for the Ring. The Aeonian represents a potentiality from beyond the limits of the known universe, potentially quite powerful, potentially quite terrible, but potentially a turning point in the war. An anomaly by definition, which is precisely why you've been selected for this mission. Based on your backgrounds in exotic material science and recovery, xenoarchaeology, and managing uncertainties, shall we say, to circumvent this potential accession risk. And that, operatives, is the task at hand. Find your way to the anomaly, board the derelict space hulk, and recover whatever you can of this exotic technology, and return before the anomaly slips away into threadspace on its voyage across the darkness between stars. Fiddling at her wrist device once more, she continues, by our best estimates, the Aeonian's next incursion is expected near the Tannhauser beacon roughly 12 hours from now. Provenance Station is running skeleton crew. Resources are meager, but you'll have full access to the fabricators in our laboratory to prepare, should you need to require any assets. A ship is being prepared. It's not much, but it's what we've got.
I think Argo raises his hand at that point and says, unnecessary. I have a ship. I prefer we take that. And then I look like pretty pointedly at Dr. Forstall and Brago, kind of like waiting for a pushback. It's the Arrogant Neighbor. It's a beautiful ring vessel that has seen plenty of years of service on behalf of the Division of Silent Accords.
It's gorgeous.
She cocks an eyebrow. It's quite a name. I can't wait to see what this Arrogant Neighbor looks like.
Is it going to get us to where we need to go? Does it have what it takes to get us there? We've seen a bunch of these other ships crash out on the side. I don't want to be in one of those that does that.
Well, Brago, if we knew what we could build that would withstand the powerful emanations of fundamental particles that seem to be exhibited by the Aeonian, you'd be in one now. The reality is we don't know. The Arrogant Neighbor is the best bet we've got.
I smile. It's developed quite a reputation for getting into places it shouldn't be. If there's any ship that could get us past whatever defensive force your Aeonian has assembled, it's the Neighbor. I won't trust my life with any other ship.
And so the Arrogant Neighbor will be kind of the one of the mechanics in Scum and Villainy is that instead of like Beam Saber, where we would have had a squad playbook, Scum and Villainy provides a ship playbook. So the ship is kind of shared by the crew. The individual crew members, being our party here, get some benefits from the book, but we'll get into that kind of when the time is right. What does the Arrogant Neighbor look like?
Argo pulls like a smaller version of one of these data drives out, right? And like kind of, with a practice ease, inserts it into one of the ports on the stage, this holographic table, and we get the image shooting up. Grainy, smaller, but it is... the Arrogant Neighbor, I think, is shaped like the head of an axe. It's this kind of, metallic gray wedge, almost, I think like really deeply simple, right? Not like covered in all of these like different bits and bobs. It's got this really sleek profile, this kind of like dark gray steel, with like a strip of like, the observation deck, like running along the front of the wedge. And I think as it rotates, right, when like you see it from like the face on, the ship almost kind of disappears. Its profile is so thin.
And just so I'm clear, is it like, so it's like an axe head, but it's just the axe head, and is it vertical or on its side?
I think it's vertical, but I think also that can change, right? I imagine the orientation, cool. Right? Like, cool. But it is a freighter. It is this like light ship. It is something. Prior to this moment, Argo has been working as undercover as a smuggler for a group called the Silent Tide, and I think he has just arrived here in that ship from wherever he was at before this. So it is already outfitted for kind of running blockades, for kind of doing sneaky deeds.
Alice and Braga, I think like seeing this little holo display, you would probably recognize that as like docked in this same landing pad that you came in on. Probably not a lot of ships there. Might have not even really, piqued your interest when you stepped off, but you'd probably like recognize it from where you deboarded.
I also think Bracco, just with his history of, kind of being an enforcer, the various different crime, like he's familiar also with the Silent Tide and the kind of work that they do. So I think that hearing that puts him at a, if not ease, knows that at least they don't fuck around when it comes to the kind of people they get to do their smuggling too. So,
and I think, Perneb would probably kind of like step back, clicking again, this kind of wrist device, you would see these kind of like hollow, like photographs fade, and what would return is kind of this simulated map of this system. And I think there's like kind of like a big dotted line, and I'm imagining the stage projection is like pretty sizable, probably bigger than you, right? Like, so it's like, this table is, you're looking up at this with the supermassive red giant Tannhauser star in the middle. Like you are on Tannhauser 3, the beacon is on Tannhauser 4. And this like long line here comes from the, outer edge of the system, dotting towards this beacon, and continues, towards the red giant, and outward and onward. So I think I'm going to jump to the briefing now, right? Like this is the objective, right? And so, Perneb would continue here and say of course, concern and danger associated with this matter is that if indeed the Aeonian is decaying and indeed unstable, its trajectory, to the best of the apparatus's calculation, brings it in the path of the red giant. And I guess would probably add, the last time this cycle may have concluded, this star may not have been as large. So if there is an unusual fundamental signature, there's a reason to believe a catastrophe could occur were this object to collide with the sun's surface. Your objective will be to board the Aeonian in its next interval. By the calculations of the apparatus, we believe that to be about a 48-hour window. That is not a guarantee. However, we know that it will again slip back into threadspace. It is of utmost importance that you are not aboard the Aeonian when that happens, as whereabouts are unknown. We will not be able to retrieve you past that point, right? By current telemetry, the path of the Aeonian drifts steadily towards the surface of the red giant. Board the Aeonian, retrieve whatever exotic technology signature has enabled transit through folded time, transit through folded space for this period. And if you are unable to retrieve, avert its course, send it back where it came from, avoid disaster. The apparatus has calculated diplomacy coefficient. A coordinated response is not likely. Your fundamental containment procedures here, I think, follow standard protocol. Accession probability is high, but your combat differential is well within acceptable tolerances. We believe you are well suited for the work. Again, this is at your discretion. It is a privilege and an honor few are offered.
I think, big exhale as I finally kill a cigarette and stub it out on the bottom of my boot. And I think the smoke is like going through the holographic projection of the stage, right? Kind of warping the hologram. And I kind of like look at the other two, my potential squad members here. I say, so we board, steal what we can, send it off its way, or blow it up if we can't.
Ideally the former.
And if the Concordat have control of it? If we're too late?
Let's hope that's not the case.
Smirk. And I stand up, right? Kind of. I think I've got like a big coat folded over the chair behind me. I start to pick that up. And I look at the other two and then nod to Perneb. All right, mission accepted.
Dr. Forstall, you've been quiet. Does the allure of a major scientific discovery not entice you?
Of course it does. Even if it didn't, I feel duty-bound to help you in this matter. I accept the mission.
How about you, big man?
We get a steal. And if I'm lucky enough, I get to take out a couple Concordat members while we're at it. Don't tease me with a good time. Exit.
Right then. I think, probably like the adage of the division of silent accords here. I think like knowledge is free, procurement comes at a cost, right? And I think I'll turn it over here to, we're going to kind of change phase here, right? Into going into kind of some gathering information, acquiring an asset. This is basically mission prep, as the Scum and Villainy book would call it. I think Perneb would kind of kind of click heels, right? I think touching the gadget on her wrist, you'd kind of see the apparatus kind of like probably return those data vaults. And she'd say, well, with that then, you have about 12 hours. I suggest you make ready, rest up. I expect we won't run into each other again, of course, in the case that you avert a cataclysmic disaster. Good luck, silent operatives.
I'm going to make sure that I get a, whatever digital copy of this map.
Yeah, we got you a PDF.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can get a copy of the map. I think Perneb would probably also extend some of the expertise and the resources of Provenance Station to you. There is like a technology laboratory here. There's a pretty vast data archive. I think, as Perneb mentioned, most of the kind of collected knowledge of the known universe housed within these walls, at least to some degree. Yeah.
So I imagine there's got to be some kind of I don't know if the lab is the right word, like a workshop, like a place where we are allowed to where we're prepping, right, before it's time to launch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a ready room, right? I think probably in the interior chamber behind this kind of observation deck overlooking the Tannhauser Star, like a door, probably the second set of doors would open there. You'd see another room. I think probably like the image in my head is like biolab, right? Where it's just like kind of a couple of tables, right? Like there's probably like a Bunsen burner there. Like this is mostly a research station. So, there's like plenty of room for you to kind of set up and get busy.
Maybe taking the lead, Braca walks in and walks up to one of these, empty tables, able to use for anything. And underneath this like kind of big leather coat that he's wearing, he starts pulling out an obscene amount of like guns that you couldn't really see. There's one from inside the boot. There's one that's inside the cuff of his sleeve that's there. And after that takes kind of like a weirdly long amount of time of how many guns he has, looks to my now crewmates. What do you guys have?
I think Dr. Forstall is perhaps brought like sort of like a trunk and is opening up the trunk and is like placing like a backpack, some binoculars, a length of rope, just sort of expeditionary gear, right? And laying this out, neatly packing her bag, maybe going over a couple of things and going like, okay, I'll bring this, environmental suit, things like that. I think that she's pulled up this map on a sort of more personal, probably like smaller holotable, and is like maybe like she puts on like.
Oh, I love like a briefcase stage. Like you just pop it open.
A briefcase stage. Yeah, that's cool.
Sick.
So open up the briefcase stage. It pops up. I think she's like pulling on these gloves that sort of have like maybe there's a thumb and the two forefingers, and she's like manipulating the like holomap and like zooming in, maybe trying to pull some. Radio spectrometer data to see what kind of atmosphere are we talking about? What is the best point of entry?
Is that like a gather information?
Yes.
That makes sense. Why don't you give me like a study roll?
Okay. What do I have in study? We
didn't
even really go over our play sheets that much.
Yeah, and we'll share these player sheets in the Discord as well. The structure is pretty similar to Beam Saber, where we've played before. Each of the players has different allocations of different abilities. I'll just go down the list, right? For Scum and Villainy, this is Doctor, Hack, Rig, Study, Helm, Scramble, Scrap, or Sulk. Excuse me, Skulk. Oh, you're
Sulk. I don't want to go on the ship. Wow, you really don't want to. You roll perfectly.
Okay, everybody feels real bad. They feel bad for you. So, and then the final category there is Attune, Command, Consort, or Sway. And so we'll use these different attributes in the kind of variability of the story. In this phase, we're doing gather information, so there is no consequence to losing a roll. This is just to kind of refine and better understand our vector of approach for this plan, or an engagement roll. And so, yes, you have 3 in study.
Yes,
so,
I decided to really min-max my character for this one, and it appears that Mitch has taken a different approach.
I have really one rank in almost everything. Yes. Argo is kind of a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
And I'll also note, kind of for the listening audience, because these 3 in our crew were sort of selected out of the, millions of inhabitants of the ring, you are starting kind of at around a level 3. The Scum and Villainy and Forged in the Dark books don't exactly have milestone advancement in the way that like D&D does, but you do have experience points, so I've given them a little extra here, just enough so they're dangerous. So go ahead and give me that study roll.
All right, and I am rolling 3. 5.
Damn,
nice.
Okay. Yeah. So I think love the what did you call it? Spectronomy?
Radio spectrology. I don't remember.
That sounds science fiction-y to me. Yeah, so you're kind of performing some routine radio spectrology, and I think there's probably like a little sub-protocol, right, in this kind of like analytic program on the briefcase stage, and I think you would get I'm just gonna make it real sci-fi. It's like, the bars are going up and down, green to red, and it's like analyzing. There's like a little grid thing. And I think that you would be surprised to find the atmosphere emanating from this is a perfectly breathable mix of oxygen and nitrogen.
Oh, okay. What about the temperature?
Oh, good question. On a 5, I'll give it to you.
Am I going to need a coat?
Yeah. Basically, yes.
If kind of the precedence holds, everybody will need a cool coat. But I think from this you can see like there is probably like a heat signature spike as you're kind of like probably analyzing the length and aft of this craft, this object. The kind of bulbous accretion where this kind of distortion has happened, I think runs a little hotter as far as like the exterior of the ship, it's coldness of space. But I think where this gash is, based on kind of your analysis here, I would say, on a 5, you'd probably say that it's like habitable. This may like it looks like it was probably not dissimilar to like a colony. Like it's like pretty germane, livable. Like not extreme cold, not extreme hot, kind of somewhere in the middle, probably trending on the cold side. It is open to space.
Okay.
Mention of of coats here, maybe a good moment to get the camera on. We've got Brago unloading all these guns onto the table, and the good doctor has her like sci-fi setup. Each playbook in Scum and Villainy has items that are unique to that class or that playbook, and one of mine is a fine coat.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which the game describes as a heavy but well-made and well-kept coat, distinctive.
You really be dressing like that.
And so I think I am wearing, this is what I pulled off the chair behind me, and I've put it on now. I think it is like a big, oversized, I'm kind of like swallowed by it almost, but this like faded, kind of bluish gray, kind of like a military greatcoat, like a big upturned collar. It's got like mended patches. It has seen action in the field. And I think my pockets are also like, it's a ton of pockets, and they're all just like stuffed to the brim. I am really thinking here about Columbo, dear listener.
Oh, hell yeah.
Columbo's constantly like reaching in his pockets and pulling out like trash and receipts and things. And so I think maybe to kind of play off the image of like Braco with these guns and then the doctor with all of this like tech. I think we see, Argo is at one of these tables as well, and he's like kind of reaching into his own pockets, and like he lays on the table. First, it is a like beat up leather bound book. The only marking on the front, I think, is kind of like an embossed circle on this black leather, and I think we would all recognize it as members of the Ring.
Is the Ring Edition Leatherman, or what is that?
This is the Ring official moleskin. Yeah, kind of right. This is the Ring Manual, aka the Book of Circles, aka the Black Book.
Nice.
It is like the core organizing text of the Ring. It's kind of like mission statement, but also it's kind of like guide to starting your own revolution somewhere. And I think the back is a bunch of blank pages. It is a notebook also. It is like to be filled in. So I think Argo's like pulling that onto the table. I think it's truly just genuinely like kind of dumping trash out of some of these pockets. And then I think he withdraws not many guns, but one big one. It is a large, almost like a revolver, but this like big, heavy frame. My like touchstone here is like always the Samaritan from Hellboy in the Guillermo del Toro films, but also like Deckard's blaster in Blade Runner, the hand cannons of the video game Destiny. This is a Discipline Foundries model. This is a Discipline Foundries conductor model blunderbuss, a like large direct energy sort of hand cannon.
Love it. So just like kind of erupts like a big heavy bolt.
Yes, I think it's like a single shot. He's probably got like shells right inside I think I'm wearing under this coat like a just kind of like a utility vest, almost like a fisherman's vest, like just like studded with pockets. And I think there are, we can see the outline of like these bulky, shotgun shaped shells almost.
As a reminder, one of the starting upgrades you chose in your ship creation was smuggler's rigging, which allows for one carried item concealed and has no weight. So that is like a underwebbing in your gear that allows for kind of like seamless concealment.
Yeah. And I think the third thing that I put on the table is like, like a crumpled pack of these like hand-rolled cigarettes. And I think that is all that Argo like puts on the table for preparation. And I think probably, like lights up again here and like looks around the room at my two comrades, and I gesture over to Dr. Forstall, and I say, Dr. Forstall, I didn't have the chance before, but I want to say that it's a pleasure to meet you. I was a big fan of your work, First Era Hierarchies and their effects on technology today.
I think, also, maybe she was not really paying attention, but then, she's like, oh, you're familiar with my work? Intimately?
The world we live is haunted by the bones of the old world we built atop. It's a compelling idea.
Yes, one might say that we live within the context of all that came before us.
Big drag on the cigarette. And I look to Brago again, right, and all of his guns on the table. And I look back to the doctor, and I'd say, you should, doctor, if you have not already, send a message back home to the university. Instructions for how to carry on your work. Messages to friends, loved ones. Despite what the procurator upstairs might have said, I think looks at Brago and then at himself once more. We are not the kind of people you send on missions where there is a high likelihood of survival. It would be a shame if your work was left unfinished.
I think she kind of rolls her eyes. I'm certain that the apparatus wouldn't choose me for something so dangerous. I think an ounce of prevention goes a long way. I will give you that, but let's be reasonable here. I think some undue anxiety is inappropriate, frankly.
Looking over at Brago, I call it more than an ounce of prevention.
Brago's like loading like a canister into a flamethrower.
Looking over the array. He goes, of the guns that are on the table. Doctor, your certainty isn't going to protect you on the boat or on the ship.
On the boat.
On the boat. God damn it! On the boat. You know how to use one of these. In Bracco's hands, it looks like the tiniest gun that he has, but handing it over to the doctor, it now looks like a shot-off shotgun. Like, you ever had to use one of these? 2 hands, yeah. Because let me tell you, things that I've seen, that I know Argo's seen, this is going to be the most certainty we have going into this.
Well, certainly I've used a firearm before. Do you have something else, though?
I can get you whatever you need.
I think maybe walk over to the table and like look at everything, and I choose like a modest pistol.
Oh yeah.
And maybe tuck it into a sort of an inner pocket in my my tunic. I feel like she is wearing
a
sort of
fit checks rolling
dark.
What are you wearing?
Well, she's in her sort of normal. This would be worn in the classroom, in the laboratory. It is a simple, dark, or not, maybe not a dark gray, but like a sort of charcoal gray. I don't know, tunic.
Mm-hmm. So like a short collar? Like, are we talking like a smock sort of thing? Like a
more like
lab coat?
It's more like His is more like a lab coat, yes. Not so billowing that it might catch on fire if I'm not paying attention, but
I like that.
It's very like modest.
Trim.
Yeah.
Cool. And I guess while we're on it, like, are we? Actually, Carta. Forgive me. Brago, what are you like kitted out in here?
Yeah. So, just being the giant, like rough-skinned Aurelian that he is, I think that the pull for the outfit is, it's like that. It's not brown. It's a black leather, but it's the like jacket Tony wears on The Sopranos that like is kind of. It looks outdated. It's like big lapels, leather jacket, almost
like
kind of like, yeah, like kind of a weird like remnant of like a 70s big lapel leather jacket. He wears it in season 2, if that means anything to you listeners out there. But yeah, it's kind of like a trench coat, but it's got lots of, again, similar like pockets, but pretty standard pants. But a lot of what isn't seen under the coat is like holsters. Like, he's got shoulder holsters, ones for under the arms, that kind of go down his back where he can get a bunch of things in, a belt with a bunch of different things on it. So it's mostly just his everyday carry is pretty heavy. I'll say that, right. But yeah, I don't think he wears a shirt under it. It's just like this leather coat that mostly is just so that he has pockets on him,
so it's like a mesh tank top.
Yeah, really sexy little mesh tank top he wears.
And are you can we get like kind of a pull on what does an Aurelian look like? Are you like stone skin?
Right.
I think before you mentioned kind of grayish.
Yeah, he's grayish, rough. I'm not going to say like maybe a little bit like sandpaper. In my mind, it's kind of like almost like a rhino-y, kind of like a bigger, skin. Like rockier, like, yeah. I think rhino is kind of a good like pull for what his skin looks like. A little bit rockier, sandpaper, like. Also, I think his head, like it's bald, but I'm pulling like a little face casting of a little bit like Colossus from X-Men. Just kind of stone face, for lack of a better word. Very serious, thick jaw, a face that doesn't need to have too much expression because everything he needs to tell you, he shows you by walking into the room, if that makes sense. Yeah. Again, I stress that he is very, very large.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, stealth is maybe not his biggest strength, but it never has to be because who's going to stand in my way? Like,
okay, cool. Does anyone? I mean, that works for me. Like, love the big, like, kind of frumpy leather jacket. I can like smell it. In your description.
Yeah, it smells like stale, a little maybe stale beer. In the same way that Andre the Giant needed to have like 36 beers to everyone else's like 5 or 6. Like,
me too.
Yeah. Bracco goes out and orders a 6-pack of Vespers or whatever they're drinking, and but yeah, I guess in regards to things I want to do in
you mean a Vesper Light, the official beer of Risky Standard?
Yeah, Vesper Lights.
Look out for that coming to a Discord near you.
Yeah, design a logo contest, Vesper Light.
Honestly, great idea. If anybody has an idea for that, Vesper Light. Every time we go to a bar throughout season 1, Vesper Light always on tap. We are. I'll just say it. We're officially committed. We're happy to seek designs. If you've got a great poll for Vesper Light, post in the Discord.
Whereas Mitch described Argo as a Swiss Army knife, Bracco is it's a sledgehammer. And so in the gather information, he might not have the study like the doctor or be well balanced quite like Argo. I do think that his specific skill set is he gets the people in like at the station. I know it's not like I guess never mind. I was going to say it's not really a city. He can't go out. I was going to say he wanted to see if there was more information he could,
probably not, right?
Yeah, scare out of people about what may have happened to Concordat ships, or if anything else information-wise can be gleaned about.
I'd say this is like an intelligence black site, so it's definitely not quite a city. I think there's certainly like people here. They're all like in the Ring intelligence network of varying degrees.
Yeah, then I didn't
there
realize
is
that.
Probably a bar, but I don't know that like anybody would know about this particular. Like this is a Ring intelligence installation. You have been selected for the Division of Silent Accords, which I do not think most of the Ring intelligence network is super clued into.
I know we haven't
discouraged to go out and ask.
We haven't really talked about load or anything since we haven't started going.
That's my next question, right? Is like, are you guys declaring load here?
I know that Bracco is going in heavy. That is without question. I guess in an acquire asset kind of situation, maybe in talking with our good doc and with Argo, like, is there a specific type of weapon that is going to benefit us in this situation that we are going into? I know that the doctor in their like research of it found that it's breathable, so we don't need like any of that. But is there?
I would maybe can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I don't know, Dr. Forstall, if you have anything you want to add.
Not at this time.
Me, the GM, would tell you, that what you know of the Aeonian is that it is kind of like emanating an exotic fundamental signature that is rare and unusual and so dense that it's sort of like a black box. So if you have an idea for something that is like an anti-fundamental weapon or something fundamental, like maybe like a nullifier or something along those lines, I'd hear it.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. I think that both the character and me are a little
you guys are specialists,
dumb.
Right? So
dumb to what that be, but I do like the idea of like fundamental like
a field
something
nullifier,
to
something.
counteract it, that like it can throw up some kind of shield. Or
cool.
like
I like that. Yeah.
Or like I'm even thinking of like how it would be like a smoke bomb, but for like this creates a field that we can kind of surround ourselves in, so that we are like not as affected by what would be overwhelming fundamental pressures upon us. So if Bracco can go and find one of those, whatever that is, because it seems really well defined by me.
Yeah. So what you're doing here is acquiring an asset, which is something that Scum and Villainy lets us do here. I'm going to skip kind of the long-term project part of this. And so you would gain temporary use of an asset through a dice roll here. Examples of temporary use of an asset, book lists, like a contractor, like an expert or gang. I'm going to scratch that one for this one since you're a kind of a tight squad. Like a vehicle or a ship module or a special item, which I think this fits, right? And so to acquire an asset, you'll roll crew quality, and the result of this roll indicates the quality of the asset you get, using the crew quality as the base. I believe you're a crew quality of 1. I'm going to say, you're kind of a fresh group here. You're specialists, but like you kind of just met, so like maybe not a lot of cohesion. You don't exactly have a reputation. So you will roll crew quality. So is that just 1d6? Yeah.
Okay. Roll 1.
And wait, before you roll, can we kind of get like a concise idea of what it is you are building here or trying to acquire?
I guess, trying to acquire, like I said, some kind of, I think of it as a smoke grenade, that something can be pulled off the belt and tossed to give us a shield from what might be, again, overwhelming, like fundamental force. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Is like...
Sure. Let's say it's like a directional null field emitter. And I like the idea of like kind of a directional shield thing. And so yeah, does that work for you?
That
I
works.
imagine this is sort of like a thing that can kind of dampen or at least attempt to kind of counteract like a powerful fundamental force.
Yes.
Before we roll on this, also just thinking it might be worth saying, because I think we've said this word
fundamental
like 15 times now. What's the fundament, everybody? For those of us who did not join us for season 1.
Well, if you uncultured louts have not read Dr. Alice Forstall's seminar text yet, the fundament itself and fundamental space kind of represents a deeper level, like kind of the subcutaneous level of reality, right? Like fundamental is kind of like the strong force in this universe. I think it's sort of like, I think in this setting in particular, something that certain people can kind of tap into or attune to. In other instances, it is like a otherworldly source of power. Like ship reactors are powered by kind of a fundamental reactor. In our first season of Beam Saber, it kind of centers around the miracle material orichalcum, which is a kind of dense stone that is kind of known for its properties of conducting the fundament. But merely, I am a pretender on this seat, so Mitchell, if you have a more concise or convincing argument, I'm open to it.
I would say it is legally distinct from both the Force in Star Wars and the Warp from Warhammer 40K.
Very different.
And also has very little to do with something like, say, paracausality from the Destiny series.
Which is to say, all of that is pretty good reference here. So,
yes, exactly.
Paracausality, which is like not like a thing you're going to go look up in the dictionary. Paracausality is like paranormal, causality, cause and effect, is the ability to kind of like supernaturally affect reality, right? And so what we're kind of getting out of the fundament is like, it is the means of folding space. It is the means of space magic, TM. And it is the kind of ability to shape, fold, distort, or change kind of the material reality around you. It's not something like a given. It's not the force where you're born with it necessarily. But I think there are certain people who are more attuned to the fundament. And that's a capital F fundament, which you're probably going to hear us say like 1,000 times. Yeah. So
it is also worth just maybe saying it's the MacGuffin in this setting that makes like impossible things possible, right? It's a fundamental technology, allows sci-fi stuff to happen.
And if you don't like it, get your ass in the Discord and come up with something better.
But so with that clearing up for everyone who previously was like, what the fuck are they talking about? In getting this like nullifier, I think that it just allows us to not be quite as affected as by this fundament in a space that is already showing that it has wild, like fundamental output.
Yeah. It creates like a stability, right? Where the fundament creates instability. I like that.
If the fundament going up and down with this like unknown object appearing, disappearing, roller coaster, like this kind of brings it to a wavelength that we can all kind of handle a bit more, and gives us, you steadier footing to operate on if need be.
I think, kind of like we talked in Dr. Forstall's opening statements, the fundament is something that kind of stitches together interstellar civilization as we know it today. I think it's fairly well understood in the ways that we can understand it. So I'm going to say that you need like at least a 3 to like create this.
Okay.
But yeah. So why don't you go ahead and let her rip?
Rolling 1d6. 5!
Woo! Okay, nice. So I think that, kind of in this like ready room, there is a I'd say like pretty standard issue like ring fabricant unit. And you are able to kind of like, it's not quite 3D printing, but I think like, a reflection of the same kind of apparatus crane sort of mechanism we saw here. I think like it's almost like a 3D print head. And I think you're kind of able to write this thing into creation here. And on a 5, like absolutely. So that is a quality equal to your crew quality. So that's a +1, and you can put that as a null field emitter.
Cool.
Anybody else have any kind of like gathering information questions?
I'll round this out. Let's get one from everybody. I think while those two are doing their thing, while Brago is like kind of assembling this null field emitter, I think I am at like a comms unit,
mm-hmm.
And I think I am like digging through kind of like all of our like aperitic records of like communication in this system and like surrounding systems.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I've got some kind of like simple like searching algorithm, but I'm basically trying to dig through as much comms info as possible to try and kind of look for evidence of, how many, what is the relative strength of like the concordat force that we expect to be there? But also I'm kind of looking for like, has anyone else noticed this or seem to be moving in? Because I have to imagine that like, as much as like either of our factions want this also is the kind of thing that like scavengers and space pirates and all kinds of other weirdos might be interested in also like approaching. And so I think Argo is like kind of like, doing this search to see if there's any evidence of like any other third parties that might be showing up, or also get an estimation of like who already has shown up.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe this is like a hack, kind of like producing this algorithm on the fly to like rip through these records.
Yeah, I can see that. So I was going to say like studies, the other one jumps to mind, but hack makes sense to me. So you're kind of like programming this thing to like comb through like a pretty big set of communication, like archives. Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think, why don't you give me a roll? You have a +1 in hack. So,
1d6, baby. I got 1 in everything. Not entirely true, but close. Give me 1 second here. We got someone. I'm actually in the wrong Discord. I'm looking at our public Discord. There we go. Roll 1d6. Oof. Okay.
That's a 3. And so I think on a 3, no consequence. It's just gathering information. So no consequence from that. On a 3, you're able to kind of like tap into, and our camera would probably follow this, right? As you're like clacking on the keys here, up through kind of the, communication cabling and wires up to one of these, like tips of the spire here on Provenance Station, where, I think like they're probably like a cluster of these, like kind of satellite dish, listening posts. You can certainly intercept, communication here. On a 3, I'm going to say that the electromagnetic radiation of a massive, like kind of red giant star is really noisy, right? Like, so kind of everything you're picking up here is through like a din of static, and that's intentional, right? Because you were assembled at a Silent Accord outpost for this reason, right? Which is like signal interference. However, on a 3, I'll say that what you can pick up are coded messages. Like you're probably hearing like a lot, right? And as the algorithm you built is like kind of filtering through this, you would like probably be able to tell that there are other kind of transmissions on the band. Not uncommon, of course, for a connected galactic kind of civilization. But the Concordat believes, in 7 spires, right? Like a 7-spired city on the hill, the 7 spokes on a wheel, as the great wheel of progress turns, under the Hierophant's beholden gaze. And I think like you do kind of pick up a signal here that is probably like tapping out 7, kind of like Morse code dots in like a repeat, which with your experience, you would probably be able to infer is like a Concordat like number station signal. Probably matches something more like just a more of a beacon than like a necessarily like a message, as far as you can tell.
All right.
Not capital B beacon. That's like a just like a kind of like radio beacon.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Seems like maybe we're not going to have too much unexpected company. As far as a 3 will tell me.
Looks clear.
I think the last image we get right of Argo at this comms thing though, maybe like close up on the computer, right? It's like, Argo glancing over his shoulder, and then pulling up like a encrypted like messaging app on this console. And I think it's like a quick hammering of the keys, like addressed to Saddlemaker. And maybe we don't get like the full text of what I'm typing, but we see the words like Provenance Station, Aeonian, Concordat, a couple of these like keywords for the mission. And then it's like, sent, like encrypted message delivered. And then, shutting down the comms unit, right? Hands back in these big pockets, and like looking at the rest of the squad, as it were. I guess we are now a squad.
You're a crew.
A crew, rather. I guess, yeah, we're a crew. We're a squad. We're not a crew. Or so we're not a squad. We're a crew. We're in Scum and Villainy. And I think, I do like a little bit of I like kind of look. It seems like maybe people their gear is getting like ready, right? Do we, everyone's kind of got their stuff together, and I think Argo does like a little bit of almost like a theatrical bow and gestures towards like the door out of this room, and says, "The arrogant neighbor awaits us whenever you are ready, my stalwart crew."
So I'll kind of put it out there, maybe like last call for gathering information or anything.
Can I acquire an asset really quick?
Sure. Yeah. What do you got?
I want to make sure that when we board, I have a good I don't know. We've mentioned like these exist before. This sort of like drone, the scanning drones.
A drone, like
like a drone that's like equipped with LiDAR that like I can send out and it can map and it can send back real time data.
You actually don't need to acquire that asset. Because the arrogant neighbor, as part of its crew gear, has a recon drone, a small drone for surveillance, mapping, and intelligence gathering. And maybe this is like, as the doctor is like starting to like look through, right? Maybe I'm like, no worries, Doctor. The arrogant neighbor is a well-equipped ship. We have a DF-19 delinquent model recon drone aboard the craft. It should be more than suitable for your purposes. I'll tether command over to your communicator now.
Yes, that'll be fine.
Bracco, with his giant elbow, kind of, nudges the doctor, and it's the Arahelion, or what is that the organization?
Perihelion University.
Who Argo works for? What is that?
I work for Aphelion, right?
Aphelion. Nudging it, almost knocking the doctor over, maybe a little bit. Aphelion, they really get everything in the ring, huh? As he's loading up so many guns that he has acquired through working with the ring as well, but like
just wants the one thing he doesn't have.
Yeah.
Okay. So covered there. Any other thoughts there, Alice?
No. I think that'll be fine. She's also going in heavy.
So I think
I am ready. I'm ready to reveal the outfit too when it is appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
I think that she's changed into the expeditionary outfit, which is like still that dark charcoal gray, but sort of a high boot, cargo pants tucked in. I'm thinking like a sort of loose shirt with a vest with like 100 pockets, a backpack that is a sleek, modern backpack, with all of her things in it. A large brimmed like helmet, like a pith helmet.
I was gonna say it's like giving British explorer safari gear.
Maybe like a long sort of like walking stick or something. I don't know. Maybe not. I've maybe if that comes up, maybe I'll use it.
Okay, sure. So I think like with that, enough time has kind of elapsed here. We can kind of like cut the camera forward. You sleep, you get prepared. You guys are loaded up. We've done our fit check. We we can kind of move to engagement roll here. But I would say, kind of as you make your way towards the arrogant neighbor back down the lift to kind of the docking bay, I think Perneb kind of reappears, probably just to you, Argo, right? And I think kind of stepping in front would say, Cattell, a word.
Yeah. I step aside with her.
I wouldn't say it in front of the others, but I cannot understate the importance that this object is, shall we say, resolved with some finality. And I think sort of like handing you probably kind of looks like a pelican case, right? Somewhat nondescript, probably kind of looks like that briefcase stage we saw before. And, kind of says like, right, if circumstances turn dire and it seems you may not return, I'm entrusting you with this. And I think kind of like even opening it here, you can kind of see this as like a miniaturized fundamental reactor core, right? And so this is the dead man's switch, which is like, if it looks like you are in jeopardy, I trust you'll do what needs doing.
I think, I look at it with a bit of like disdain on my face, but also there's no surprise there, right? Just kind of like these sad gray eyes looking down at the case, and then back up at Perneb as I reach forward and take it, and there's a kind of maybe like a familiarity here. This is not the first time I've seen or held a case like this. And I look back up at her as I take it and I say, what am I if not a tool in the hands of the ring? I'll make sure the situation is resolved.
As are we all. Good luck. Okay, so the engagement roll is where players will choose a plan and provide its detail. We've kind of cut the action and described some of the scene already. An engagement roll is a fortune roll, starting with 1d forward for sheer luck. Again, kind of the objective here is to get aboard the Aeonian, retrieve any exotic technology that has permitted this kind of unknown space anomaly to power its flight across the cosmos for centuries. And as a secondary objective, if you are unable to retrieve it, to avert its course, send it back the other direction, or destroy it before it's able to kind of run into the surface of this red giant. In an engagement roll, you'll kind of need to... Do we have like some clarity on the vector for approach here? I think there's this gash in the side. There, are potentially other ways to get on. What is your kind of a plan of attack here?
Yeah, do we want to approach where we think that the Concordat also went in? Or do we want to try to find...
I guess maybe this is like a little gathering information that we might want to do before we roll on this. Is like, do we have a sense of like other entrances on the vessel?
Ooh, that's true.
I'll say you don't even really need to roll for this. I'd say like in the imagery, you can see there's this kind of like rend in the side of the craft, and I would say even probably off of Dr. Forstall's kind of analysis, you could probably make out there's like a what appears to be more of a common like hangar. I think it's a fair assumption there's a way to get on and off this thing.
Okay.
Do you want to like break down for us like what an engagement roll is and means?
Sure. An engagement roll is going to kind of determine your plan of attack. The detail, of course, is like how you will approach that. So the different plans are assault, as in doing violence to a target, deception, as in to lure, trick, or manipulate, infiltration, being to pass unseen, mystic, being engaging with the kind of attunement, the fundament in our setting, or an otherwise kind of ethereal power, social, negotiating, bargaining, or persuading, or transporting, being kind of the carrying cargo or transporting people through danger. Depending on which of these kind of plans of attack you choose, we'll go through a couple of questions to associate dice, being the variables that may be hazards in your way. And the outcome of those dice will determine your starting position, being controlled, risky, or desperate. So to me, I'm going to mark off a couple of these right off the bat. I don't think you're doing anything social here. I don't think you're doing anything mystic here, which leaves you with assault, deception, infiltration, or transport. And I would,
I think infiltration is standing out. It's probably the
I
most
think I already
obvious
described
one.
the arrogant neighbor as kind of like a smuggling ship, a stealth ship, right? It's meant to sneak in places.
Okay, so to trespass unseen, and then the detail being that when you choose a plan, you need to provide the key detail, like the point of attack, social connection, etc. If you don't know the detail, you can gather information and ask questions. I'll leave that open now. We've done a little bit of that so far. And this kind of gives us our jumping off point.
In my mind, it is like, this thing I feel like is so big, right? It probably has like some degree of like kind of gravitational pull.
I would agree with that.
I mentioned that there's probably like stuff around it, right? Debris, like things have collected with it over time. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, it's like, this ship that is like this kind of chisel axe head shape, this like thin ship, right? Is meant to be able to fly, kind of through clustered or cluttered, like, kind of space areas. I imagine it's like kind of sliding through this debris field for as long as possible to kind of remain unseen until we can curve in for an approach towards the Aeonian, the object.
Yeah. Gives them another moment to see what, when we're actually up close. Because we didn't have great visuals on this already. So
exactly.
anytime we can have as we approach to, get any kind of recon we can from that would be also appreciated.
Yeah. Can I ask one other kind of clarifying question to Argo? Your kind of encrypted message, is that to a known contact? Are you trying to leverage contacts? That's another mechanism in Scum and Villainy. You can declare a contact, which may provide some benefit to an engagement roll.
Not yet, but I reserve the right to flash back at a later point.
Sure, that works.
Really, what I'm trying to do there is put in some color of like wheels within wheels. I think Argo has, handlers or members in the ring that he is like informing who are maybe like not the procurator Perneb, right? Is like I'm just trying to be a little shady and so I don't besides the fact that I just came up with the name Saddle Maker for that person. I have nothing yet, but catch me in the mission when we flash back and maybe we'll have something.
Saddle Maker. That's great.
Okay. So with that, again, it's a fortune roll. So we're starting with one die for sheer luck. Is this operation particularly bold or daring?
I think so. We don't know anything about it, and we're going in, and it's been made clear that.
Yep. So
we won't
that
come
brings
back.
us up to
maybe
2 dice. Is this operation overly complex or contingent on many factors?
I don't think so. I think it's a pretty straightforward. The once we get on the ship, it's going to be confusing as hell and very complicated. But like the actual approach is like
pretty straightforward.
This is something Argo's done 1,000 times, right? It's flying, quiet and slow through like a obscuring, debris or other element to then get in close and usually do something bad to someone.
Does the plan's detail expose a vulnerability of the target or hit them where it's weakest? And just to be clear, that detail is you're attempting to kind of board the Aeonian through the gash. Is that the idea?
I don't know if we're going for the gash, right? I thought
right.
My mind, it's decide which entryway we're going to take once we are like through the debris field.
Okay. So yeah, using the kind of debris field as a cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So does the plan expose a vulnerability of the target or hit them where it's weakest?
Not
especially so. Probably not on that. Okay. So that is at 2. Is this target strongest against this approach, or do they have particular defenses or special preparations?
No.
Yeah. So we're going to keep it at 2. Can any of your friends or contacts provide aid or insight for this mission? I'd say the ring briefed you on this one. Perneb kind of set you up. You had access to everything at Provenance Station, so we'll give you a dice for that one. So that brings you up to 3 dice. Are there any enemies or rivals interfering in the operation?
Possibly.
Yeah, God only knows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it depends if the Concordat is there and having a great time dealing with it, and we have to take care of, so they don't get too much information, but...
That'd be crazy, right?
That would be crazy.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Damn, that's crazy.
I'm going to take that down to 2 dice.
Rock and roll.
And then are there any other elements you want to consider? Maybe a lower tier target gives you 1d forward. Maybe a higher tier target will give you -1 dice. Maybe there's a situation in the system that makes the operation more or less tricky. I'm going to say that the risk and reward on this is an element that makes it more tricky. And I would say that, like, were you not as prepared, I would maybe take a dice away. But because you've researched a fair amount, you kind of have the resources at your disposal. I'm not going to take one away. So that leaves you with 2 dice, unless somebody has a kind of compelling pitch here.
I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily to give us another dice, but just like in a way that, like, we did do research. We also had the apparatus pull us together because we are specifically what it thinks throwing at this, issue.
Yeah,
can help
I agree
with
with
it.
that.
So
I'll give you. We'll take it up to 3 dice. Is that what you're suggesting? Like you?
Sure. I just that specifically, this
We're not
is
at a disadvantage, right? We are the best people you could have sent at it. So
yeah, selected for this chosen purpose.
If not an extra dice, please don't take another one away from us.
Sure.
Yes, that is more
away. So yeah, we'll do it. I'll give you 3 dice here for the engagement roll. That'll be a 3d6 on an infiltration roll.
I would like to put it to the table that I have never gotten to roll an engagement roll in this entire podcast.
Oh, baby
far.
boy,
Do we think he's
rolling.
earned it, folks? Yeah, Mitch, why don't you do a
your ship too? So,
a little slash roll 3d6. Sending it.
And so for the listening audience, a 1 to 3.
Oh, baby!
Hidden with a 6 on roll 1.
You go ahead and tell that listening audience what's up.
Yes. So that is a 6 from our very own Mitch Brewster as Argo Cattell in your first ever engagement roll. That is what we'd normally call a crit. So that's a 6. Dice outcome was 5, 6, and 1. So
6 and a 5. Damn, boy.
A 6 will put you at a controlled position. That would mean, in kind of plain language, that you are acting on your own terms and you're exploiting a dominant advantage. This kind of cover here of the kind of debris fields should kind of keep you with increased effect. Okay. And so I think, you kind of ready up. You 3 make your way kind of back to the docking bay where the arrogant neighbor is waiting. I think, finding your way onto the ship, I'll leave it to you to kind of figure out, what kind of positions you're helming next time when we jump into this. But I would say waiting for you in the arrogant neighbor is kind of a black enameled box. And I think on opening it, you'd find 3 of these kind of badges that you probably would have seen on Perneb's jacket as well. It's sort of like kind of 2 upward pointing chevrons, 2 downward pointing chevrons with kind of a black ring in the middle. This being, of course, the insignia of the Division of Silent Accords, kind of like sitting here. And yeah, next time we'll jump right into that controlled position for the engagement roll on your approach to the Aeonian. And in our parting shot, the camera follows us out and away from the hangar bay as we get a closing shot of the 3 of you boarding Argo Cattell's modified frigate, the Arrogant Neighbor, and we continue pulling back, out and away from Provenance Station. We see the Neighbor's drive spin up, readying for departure, and as our camera continues, we pull further and further out, zooming out and away from the burning ember of the red giant star at the heart of this system, faster now,
outward, elsewhere, towards the edge of the system, where we see a blue-green gas giant holding still and quiet in the static expanse of space. There's a low, murmuring hum like the eerie song of cosmic radiation, and almost like a drop of water breaking the surface of a still pond, 1,000 pinpricks of distant starlight seem to shimmer and bend, and I think all of a sudden, this rippling gives way to a long and shadowed silhouette drawing out across the surface of this gas giant as the Ionian shudders and lurches into real space, leering ominously in your direction. And we'll pick up right there next time with the Division of Silent Accords, only on Risky State.